The story begins with a hardcore gamer named Kanishi, who has just finished a game that took him a full 3 years to complete. After clearing it, he leans back in his chair and lets out a sigh, thinking about how boring and disappointing the game actually was. Despite the long time it took, it never truly challenged him. What Kanishi really wants is a game that will push him to his limits, something so difficult that it would take him at least 10 years to beat. He wants a real challenge, not something he can clear with enough patience. With that in mind, Kanishi immediately starts searching for his next game. He scrolls through different titles, reviews, and recommendations, but nothing catches his interest. Suddenly, his computer screen glitches and flickers. Strange text appears on the screen, offering him a game that never ends and is set in a fantasy world filled with magic. Kanishi's eyes widen in excitement. He has never heard of a game that never ends before, and the idea alone gets his heart racing. Without hesitation, he clicks on it. He is then asked to select the difficulty level. The options range from easy mode to hard mode, which already seems standard and uninteresting to him. However, as he scrolls down further, he notices an extra option at the bottom called Hell mode. This is something he has never seen in any game before. His excitement skyrockets as he realizes that this might finally be the challenge he has been looking for. Without a second thought, he selects Hell mode. Next, he chooses the Summoner class and confidently clicks the Start button. The moment he does, something strange happens. His screen flashes brightly, and before he can react, he gets sucked straight into his computer screen. The next thing he knows, he wakes up in a completely different world as a newborn baby, crying as he is born into a poor serf family. Shortly after his birth, a man picks him up gently and gives him a name. That name is Alan. Surprisingly, Alan does not feel upset about his situation. In his previous life, he was a 35-year-old broke gamer stuck, working a dead-end job with no future. Compared to that, this new life feels like a fresh start. Being reincarnated gives him a second chance to live a better and more meaningful life. At the moment, Alan is only 1 year old, so he cannot speak yet. However, he has no trouble thinking clearly inside his mind. He can organize his thoughts, understand what people say around him, and observe everything carefully. He also realizes that the language spoken in this world is Japanese, meaning it is the common language here. Alan and his family live in a frontier village where pioneers pay taxes to a ruling lord in exchange for the right to cultivate the land. The village is still new and undeveloped, so it does not even have a proper name yet. Alan's father is named Rodden, a hardworking and caring man who does everything he can to support his family. Judging by his looks and behavior, Alan guesses that Rodden is around 20 years old. His mother's name is Derja, and Alan assumes she is likely in her late teens. Watching how close and loving his parents are with each other, Alan figures it is only a matter of time before he ends up with younger siblings as well. Later that night, after Alan is put to bed, he lies there quietly and starts thinking. He suddenly remembers that in this world, he is supposed to be a summoner. Curious, he decides to try opening a status window to check his stats. However, the moment he attempts to do that, something unexpected happens. Instead of a simple window appearing, a large book suddenly materializes and floats above him in the air. Alan shrieks in shock at the sudden sight of it, completely startled by what just appeared. His shout immediately grabs his parents' attention. Realizing this is bad, Alan panics and quickly makes the floating book disappear before they can see it. His parents rush in to check on him, but when they see that nothing strange is happening, they assume he was just making noise in his sleep. Thinking it is nothing serious, they quietly leave the room. Once they are gone, Alan carefully brings the book back out again. He soon learns that the floating book is actually a grimoire that contains all the details about his stats and abilities. As he reads through it, he confirms that he really is a summoner, just like the class he chose in the game. The book explains that he can summon creatures, but because of his young age, he is currently limited to summoning only insects and beasts. Even so, Alan feels extremely excited. He wants to summon something right away, so he tries summoning an insect. However, no matter how many times he tries, nothing happens at all. After several failed attempts, Alan forces himself to calm down and think carefully. He remembers another skill listed in the grimoire and decides to try using his create skill first. When he activates it, something finally happens. A crafting card for an insect appears right in front of him. Seeing this, Alan realizes that he needs to create the creature first before he can summon it. Now that he has the crafting card, he prepares to summon the insect properly. quickly, just as he is about to do it. His mother comes in to check on him. Alan reacts instantly, lying back down and pretending to be asleep. Even after his mother leaves the room, he notices that he is suddenly very tired. His eyelids feel heavy, and he realizes that forcing himself to stay awake is pointless. Deciding it is better to rest, he chooses to go to sleep and try summoning again the next morning. The following morning, when his parents are not watching him, Alan carefully brings out his grimoire again. This time, he successfully completes the summoning. In an instant, a giant grasshopper appears and jumps straight onto his face. Alan panics, but quickly recovers and tries giving it orders, telling it to obey him. Unfortunately, the grasshopper shows no interest in listening and simply hops away on its own. Confused, Alan checks the grimoire again, hoping it might explain what is going on. He finds the grasshopper's stats written inside the book. The grimoire also informs him that he needs to give his summoned creature a name. After thinking for a moment, Alan decides that Denka sounds like a decent name for a grasshopper. He then looks at his own stats and realizes that summoning Denka has actually increased his abilities. However, before he can celebrate, his mother suddenly walks into the room. She immediately notices Denka, since she is extremely afraid of insects. She reacts without thinking and instantly squashes the grasshopper. Just like that, Denka is gone. After a few more days of playing around with his skills and testing different things, Alan finally manages to summon another creature. This time, it is a small mouse, which he decides to name Mousy. Unfortunately, Mousy turns out to be just as unintelligent as Denka was. He does not really listen to orders and mostly does whatever he wants. However, unlike Denka, Mousy has a useful ability called Scurry, which allows him to move around the room at an extremely fast speed. While Mousy is still not very obedient, he will at least use Scurry whenever Alan tells him to, which makes Alan feel slightly better about the summon. Alan spends the rest of the day carefully studying his grimoire. He reads through every page again and again, trying to understand how summoning really works and what he needs to do to summon stronger monsters that can properly follow commands. He thinks about different methods, possible conditions, and skill combinations, but no matter how much he studies, he cannot find a clear answer. In the end, all his effort leads to nothing, and he is left feeling a little frustrated. That afternoon, Alan's father, Rodden, finally returns home. His clothes are stained with blood, and it is clear that he has just come back from a dangerous hunt. Rodden proudly tells Alan that he managed to take down a massive boar. He goes on to describe just how large and terrifying it was, and then asks Alan if he wants to go see it. Hearing this, Alan becomes incredibly excited. This would be the first real monster he has ever seen in this world. Seeing how thrilled his son is, Rodden decides to take him along. This is Alan's first time leaving the house, so he feels thrilled. At that moment, his father points toward a flock of birds known as Albahiron. During this season, they fly north together, signaling the arrival of fall. Rodden then explains to Alan that he named him after the Albahiron. After about a 10-minute walk, they arrive at the spot where the boar is being cut up. Several people are already there, working together to process the monster. At first, Alan is filled with excitement as he stares at it up close. However, after examining it more carefully, that excitement slowly turns into fear. Seeing such a large and powerful monster in person makes him realize just how terrifying it truly is. Alan understands that if he ever had to fight something like this right now, he would stand no chance at all. After a short while, one of their neighbors, a man named Gerda, walks over to Rodden and congratulates him on defeating the boar. Soon after, the other villagers nearby begin cheering as well. They all know that taking down a boar like that is no easy task and that it is a great achievement. Rodden then formally introduces Alan to Gerda. Gerda is left completely speechless when he sees how polite and well-mannered Alan is, especially considering that he is only 1 year old. Putting that aside, Alan asks Gerda how strong a boar actually is. Gerda explains that boars are naturally C-rank monsters and that it usually takes around 20 people working together to bring just one of them down. Hearing this, Alan quietly takes note of the information. He realizes that this gives him a clear benchmark for what kind of strength exists in this world and what he might have to face in the future. About 10 months later, Alan receives some exciting news. He discovers that he has finally reached level 2 as a summoner. This level up allows him to create G-rank creature cards, which is a big step forward for him. On top of that, he gains a brand new skill that lets him fuse his summoned creatures together. The best part of all is that his inventory space doubles. This means he can now hold twice as many buffs as before, greatly increasing his potential strength. That night, after finishing During dinner, Alan feels more excited than ever. With his new level, new skill, and expanded inventory, he eagerly prepares to test out his fusion technique for the very first time. But Alan soon ends up feeling disappointed when he realizes that he still cannot use his fusion technique on his cards, even when his MP is completely full. No matter how hard he tries or how carefully he follows the process, the fusion simply does not activate. This frustrates him, but he understands that he is still too young and not strong enough yet. Time passes, and by the time Alan turns 3 years old, he has made clear and noticeable progress on his path as a summoner. After many attempts and much practice, he finally succeeds in using his fusion technique on several of his cards. Through this process, he manages to craft a bird card, and the bird he summons from it is named Chappie. Chappie has a special ability called voice mimicry, which allows him to perfectly imitate anything Alan says. When Alan hears Chappie copy his voice, he immediately realizes how useful this ability could be. He imagines using it to confuse enemies, lure monsters into traps, or create distractions during battle. As Alan looks at everything he has learned so far, he feels satisfied with how deep and complex this world is. He honestly admits to himself that this world feels like the peak of hardcore gaming, far beyond anything he ever experienced in his previous life. By the time it reaches 3 o'clock in the afternoon, one of Alan's friends, a girl named Krina, comes over for a playdate. As usual, they start playing knights and sword fighting with wooden sticks. At first, Alan underestimates her, thinking that winning will be easy for him. However, to his surprise, Krina is much faster and more agile than he expected. She moves quickly, dodges his attacks, and strikes back before he can react. Alan struggles to keep up with her pace, and before he realizes it, he ends up losing the fight. By the end of the day, Alan is completely worn out and beaten badly by Krina. His body aches and his pride is bruised. But instead of feeling discouraged, he quietly vows to himself that he will become stronger before their next battle. That night, important news is revealed to the family. Derja announces that she is pregnant. Hearing this, Alan tells his father that he wants to help with harvesting the potatoes, since his mother will not be able to help as much anymore. Deep down, Alan knows he will be fine doing physical labor because he now has the stamina of a grown adult. However, his parents do not know that. They gently tell him that a child his age should not have to work and that he should focus on playing and having fun instead. They encourage him to keep spending time with Krina since they have noticed how happy he looks when they play nights together. They also mention that they are really looking forward to Alan's appraisal ceremony. Alan has no idea what that is, so Derja explains that when he turns 5 years old, there will be a divine ceremony to determine what kind of talent he possesses. They truly hope that Alan will receive a good talent, one that could finally free their family from life as serfs. A few months later, during the winter season, Alan accidentally forgets to put Denka away. Because of this, his mother suddenly sees the insect. Terrified, Derja slips and falls to the ground. When Rodden rushes in to check on her, Derja tells him that her water has broken and that the baby is coming. Krina happens to be nearby at the time, since she and Alan were having another playdate. Rodden quickly asks Krina to go get her parents because they have experience helping with childbirth. Not long after, Gerda and his wife, Matilda, arrive to help Derja. Matilda takes charge of the situation and prepares to deliver the baby. She immediately orders all the men out of the house, saying she needs privacy to work properly. The long night passes, and by the next morning, the boys wake up to the sound of a baby crying. They rush over and find that the baby has been safely delivered. Derja asks Rodden to name the child. Without thinking too deeply about it, Rodden decides to name him Mash. Derja instantly loves the name, but after thinking about it for a few seconds, she wonders if the name came from a monster. Rodden admits that it did, but Derja cannot deny that it sounds good. She starts laughing, and everyone else joins in. As they laugh together, Alan quietly watches them. Thinking back on everything, Alan realizes that he never truly understood why he was reincarnated in the first place. Aside from his desperate wish to play a hardcore game with terrible balance, he remembers how miserable and meaningless his old life felt and realizes that he is completely fine leaving it behind. In this new world, he feels free, unrestrained, and full of possibilities. More than anything else, he knows that this new family is the best part of his new life. He is not sure how he will do it yet, but Alan makes a silent promise to himself. No matter what it takes, he will free his family from the harsh life of being serfs. Time passes, and by the time Alan turns 5 years old, Alan's father takes him on a walk through a wide flower field and begins telling him about the appraisal ceremony. According to him, it is a special ceremony that every child in their village must take part in once they turn 5 years old. If a child is discovered to possess a talent, it could allow both the child and their family to rise up and escape their life as serfs. However, Rodden explains to Alan that it will not be easy at all, because there will be many competitors since their village is very densely populated. Along the way, they run into Krina and her father, and the four of them decide to travel together to a nearby commoner village. Not long after, they arrive at the commoner village, and Alan is shocked that the people living there are even considered commoners, as they are well groomed and wear clothes that are much nicer than his own. Shortly after this moment, the appraisal ceremony is ready to begin, so the priests slowly open the large main door, and first they ask the common people to show respect to Elmia, the god of creation. After that, they continue by saying that heroes in the kingdom do not only come from people with high rank, power, or status, but can also come from ordinary serfs. Alan hears this and immediately knows it is true, because when he was reading the game's epilogue, it clearly said that classes like the hero and sword lord must begin from a low social class. At first, he believed this was only a boring game rule with no real meaning, but he soon realizes that it applies to the entire world. Because of this rule, everyone, no matter their status or background, must take part in the ceremony. After that explanation is finished, the commoners calmly move forward and slowly make their way inside the building. Once inside, Alan notices a statue standing at the center and assumes it must be the god worshipped in this world, Elmia. Not long after, the appraisal ceremony starts, beginning with the village chief and his son, Palomas. Palomas steps forward toward the crystal ball and places his hand on it, causing the screen to light up and announce that he has the talent of becoming a merchant. His father immediately jumps with joy and rushes over to hug him, relieved as he realizes that his son is not useless after all. Alan watches in complete awe when all of a sudden his grimoire appears floating in front of him and starts writing down several numbers on its pages. This makes him realize that attributes are now being shown as clear values instead of hidden numbers. What he likes the most is that he is the only one who can see the grimoire at all, which means he can freely use it however he wants without anyone noticing. The ceremony continues as the children happily celebrate with their parents after receiving their new skills, but sadly, not everyone is lucky enough to gain a talent, leaving some of them feeling disappointed. The next child is Dagora, and he places his hand on the crystal, causing it to light up. The priest informs him that his talent is being an axe user. Dagora immediately jumps with joy and runs over to his father to celebrate. One by one, everyone receives their talent judgment and leaves the area, until only Alan and Krina remain, standing there with their parents. Krina quickly rushes up to the crystal ball, excited and eager to discover what kind of talent she has. The moment she touches it, a bright light bursts out from the crystal, and when the time comes to announce her talent, even the priests are shocked by the result. Most of her stats are nearly maxed out, and she is revealed to have the talent of a sword lord, which is known as one of the rarest and strongest talents. Her father is overjoyed, believing that his only daughter might finally be his way out of the trenches. But Krina herself does not look very happy, because she actually wanted to become a simple swordsman instead. Alan is not surprised at all, since he always believed there was something special about her. He is also excited, hoping his parents will learn that he is a summoner, so he confidently walks up to the crystal to have his own talent revealed. He places his hand on it, and a blinding light bursts out, sending him flying before he crashes to the ground. Rodden quickly rushes over to one of the priests and asks if his son has awakened a unique talent, but instead, the priest announces that Alan has no talent at all. Rodden does not look upset in the slightest. Instead, he calmly holds Alan by the shoulders and tells him that it is time for them to go home. The two of them head back home afterward, where Derja and Alan's little brother, Mash, are already waiting to give them a warm and cheerful welcome. Later that night, Rodden sits down with Alan and tells him not to feel bad about me not having a talent, explaining that nothing like that would ever change how much they love him. Even so, Alan still feels a little disappointed about the fact that he did not receive a talent of his own. Despite that, he remains grateful and happy that he was born into such a caring and loving family. Later that night, Alan lies awake in bed with his grimoire open in front of him. As he looks through it again, he notices that every single one of his attributes is listed as E rank. At the very least, today helped him realize one important thing. He is the only person in this world playing on Hell mode. mode. Alan assumes that the ranking system most likely reflects how much growth a person can expect when they level up. Because of that, he believes the reason all of his abilities are E rank is due to him choosing the Hell mode difficulty, which probably reduces his progress to 100th of what it is normally supposed to be. That can only mean the stats shown in the grimoire are just a small fraction of his true potential. Alan realizes that a difficulty like this is usually where most people would quit, but not him. He is on a mission to prove that he is capable of conquering any hardcore game he chooses to face. The next day, Alan and his family head over to Krina's house to celebrate her Sword Lord talent. Along the way, Alan cannot help but notice that his father seems upset about something, even though he clearly does not want to talk about it. That bad mood follows Rodden all the way to Krina's house. When it is time for everyone to start drinking together, Rodden and Gerda begin bickering over something completely pointless. Alan watches them argue and wonders if his father's attitude could be caused by jealousy over Krina becoming a Sword Lord. However, he quickly dismisses the idea, knowing that his father is not that petty of a person. The argument continues to escalate as Rodden and Gerda shout back and forth at each other. Suddenly, Gerda drops a bombshell, revealing that Rodden once said he wanted to cut all ties with their family. Everyone who hears this is left completely shocked. Rodden admits that it is true, but explains that it is not because he wants to. He says that Krina's talent is 1 in a million and could even put her on the path to becoming a noble. Because of that, he believes they should not risk her future by continuing to associate with serfs like them. Even after that explanation, the two continue arguing for a while longer, until their wives finally step in and slap some sense into them. Matilda and Derja then explain the truth, revealing that all 4 of them are childhood friends who grew up together in the same village. Apparently, Gerda and Rodden have always been thick-headed meatheads who were constantly looking for excuses to fight each other. Though becoming fathers managed to calm them down a little, reminiscing about old memories helps everyone cool off, and they spend the rest of the night enjoying themselves and sharing liquor together. The next day, rumors about Krina's talent spread quickly, and before long, the Order of Knights begins planning a special visit to see her in person. Shortly after that, the knights arrive at the village on horseback. As soon as they do, Krina and her father rush over to the knight commander to properly introduce her. While they speak, Alan watches from a distance and begins to wonder if this means Krina will have to leave the village and become a full-fledged knight someday. He understands that this is the path she is meant to take, but even so, he admits to himself that he is going to miss her when that day comes. After the commander speaks with Gerda for a while, he suddenly reaches a harsh conclusion. He claims that they may have been lying about Krina possessing the Sword Lord talent. Because of that, he declares that she must prove it in a duel against the vice captain. If she fails, she will be executed on the spot, since lying about one's talent is punishable by death. Gerda immediately refuses, unable to accept why someone as old and experienced as the vice captain would be forced to spar with a 5-year-old child. Alan feels the same way, but he knows there is nothing he can do to stop it. Krina looks over at the sword she will be using for the duel and notices how shiny and beautiful it is. Excited by that alone, she immediately agrees to the duel and tells her father not to worry. Hearing this, Gerda does not even know what to say anymore and is left completely stunned. With that, the duel between Krina and the vice captain, Leibrand, begins. For the first few moments, the two appear evenly matched. However, Leibrand soon uses his overwhelming strength to overpower Krina and slam her into a wall. Gerda sees this and desperately tries to intervene, but the knights restrain him and hold him back. At that moment, the knight commander already believes the fight is over. To his surprise, Krina suddenly stands back up, surrounded by a faint blue aura. She charges straight at Leibrand and unleashes a barrage of sword slashes that are 10 times faster and stronger than her earlier attacks. Leibrand struggles to keep up, and before long, his sword is sliced clean in half. Seeing this, the commander immediately calls an end to the duel. The vice captain is left in complete disbelief, unable to comprehend how his 24-year-old self was just defeated by a 5-year-old girl. The crowd erupts into cheers for Krina, now fully convinced that she truly is the Sword Lord. Gerda feels overwhelming pride as he watches his daughter overcome impossible odds. Shortly after, the commander approaches Gerda and declares that there is is no longer any doubt about Krina's talent. He says he would like the opportunity to discuss her future with him. Although Jirda is still angry about being forced to put Krina through such a dangerous trial, he agrees to talk. They head to the village chief's residence, where the discussion begins over dinner. The knight commander introduces himself as Xenof and explains that he was sent by the lord of the land to confirm whether a sword lord truly existed. After witnessing the duel firsthand, he confidently confirms it. Xenof then announces another decision made by the lord of the land. Although the village was originally meant to be named after the village chief, the discovery of a sword lord has changed everything. To honor her, the village will now be named Krina Village. After that, Xenof apologizes to Jirda for subjecting his daughter to such a brutal test. Jirda is not the type to hold grudges, so he accepts the apology and lets it go. Xenof then tells Jirda to continue raising Krina the same way he always has. Once she reaches the age of 12, she will be sent to the Royal Academy to study and fully master her talent. Hearing about this, Alan becomes excited at the thought of an academy filled with people who possess talents like hers. However, as the conversation continues, Alan starts to wonder why Dagora, one of the children who received the axe talent, is present as well. Xenof acknowledges Dagora and tells him to work as hard as possible to train and earn admission into the academy someday. With that settled, Xenof turns his attention to Alan and notices something unusual. He finds it strange that Alan has both dark hair and dark eyes, which is rare. When Xenof learns that Alan is the son of Rodden the boar hunter, he immediately stands up and pays his respects. Xenof explains that Rodden is known as a legendary figure in the village, a man responsible for handling most of the dangerous tasks during hunts. He is considered a true hero by the people. As Alan listens to all of this, he feels proud to hear his father being praised so highly. In his heart, Alan realizes that his dad really is a hero after all. Later that evening, Jirda and Rodden bid each other farewell. Rodden believes that Krina may become a hero someday, but he is even more impressed that she was acknowledged by the Lord. He then tells Alan to continue working hard, saying he is destined for great things since he is his son after all. Just then, Alan pulls out a few fruits he stole from the meeting, and Rodden does the same, causing them both to laugh together. Sometime later, Alan gets really hyped up because he has finally leveled up his summoner skill. His grimoire now says he has an enhanced skill, so he wonders if that means he will be able to summon stronger things. He gets even more excited as he thinks about how he will eventually be able to summon something cool like a dragon. It took him 2 years to reach this milestone, so when he thinks about it, he realizes that it was actually worth all the effort and waiting. Later that night, Derja and Rodden announce that they are going to have yet another child, and their guess is that it is going to be a girl. Because of that, they all start thinking up possible names for the baby. Alan's grimoire suddenly appears, and after he looks inside it, he sees the name of the god of creation written there. Without thinking too much, he suggests that they call the baby Elmia. His parents quickly tell him to shut up and warn him that they do not speak the name of their god in vain. Alan realizes that he messed up, so he quickly tries to change the topic to avoid more trouble. To do that, Alan points out that his dad's scar is already healing up. Rodden explains that he got the scar when he passed one of the trials of the gods during a boar hunt. Alan has no idea what a trial of the gods is, so Rodden takes the time to explain it to him. He says that it is a special moment that sometimes happens while they are hunting. During that moment, they feel a sudden burst of energy that removes all their wounds and exhaustion, making them feel refreshed and strong again. When Alan hears this, he realizes that this is just how people in this world describe leveling up. It suddenly makes a lot more sense to him. Even though his summoning skill has gone up, he understands that he is still going to remain at level 1 unless he manages to defeat some real monsters. Just improving a skill is not enough. He knows that if he truly wants to grow stronger, he needs real combat experience. Because of this, Alan decides that he needs to take hunting more seriously. He asks his dad if he can come along on a hunt so that he can gain experience and maybe even level up for real. However, his dad immediately turns him down. Rodden reminds him that hunting is not some kind of game or training exercise. He tells Alan that it has real dangers and serious consequences, and that mistakes during a hunt can cost people their lives. Hearing this, Alan understands that getting stronger will not be easy, but that doesn't mean he'll be willing to give up just like that. Later that night, right before Alan goes to bed, he pulls out his grimoire and sees that he has just received a message from Elmia. The message explains that during the appraisal ceremony, his stats stats were shown as E rank because he is on hell mode. However, the message also shows his true raw stats. Alan is relieved and happy to see that his real stats are actually on the same level as Krina's. This makes him feel much more confident about his future. Feeling curious and ready to experiment, Alan decides to try using his enhanced skill on Denka. Just as he expected, the skill amplifies all of the stats Denka already had. When Alan materializes Denka, even though Denka has not grown much bigger, Alan can tell just by looking at him that he has clearly been enhanced and has become stronger. Just then, Derja walks into the room and spots the bug. She gets scared when she sees it and quickly squashes it with her foot. Even so, he does not give up. Alan spends the rest of the night summoning and testing his skills. By morning, he comes to an important realization. The enhancements he puts on a card do not go away. This means that as long as he has enough MP to spare, he should enhance all the cards in his inventory to make them stronger over time. Shortly after that, Rodden heads out to go hunting. Everyone tells him goodbye and wishes him luck before he leaves. Later, while Alan is doing some chores around the house, he realizes that he has not been able to pull off any new fusions, even after trying several different combinations. He starts to feel a little frustrated. The only last possible combination he has not tried yet is a bird and an insect. When he finally tries to fuse them, he smiles when he sees the result at first. However, that smile quickly fades when he realizes that the new card that was created is just an apple. At first, he feels disappointed, thinking that the fusion failed in a strange way, but then he decides to carefully check the buffs on the card. As he reads through them, his smile returns. He realizes that he has finally gotten a creature that has an MP buff. This is a huge breakthrough for him because it means he will be able to do far more actions and summons over the course of a single day. Before this, he believed it would take him several decades to level up. Now, with this creature's MP buff, he realizes that leveling up could be cut down to just a couple of years instead. Alan materializes the card, and the strange apple creature is formed in front of him. Looking at it, Alan decides that it needs a proper name. After thinking for a moment, he smiles and decides to name the creature Apo. After a little while, Apo shows Alan his special skill. Apo sinks into the ground and then grows into a tall stem that releases the sweet scent of an essential oil. Alan is busy breathing in the smell when he suddenly sees his mom coming toward him. He quickly tries to get rid of the stem, but it does not disappear. His mom walks over and notices the stem, but she does not think much of it because it gives off such a pleasant and relaxing smell. Later in the day, Krina comes over for training. During their sparring, Krina completely wipes the floor with Alan and easily defeats him again and again. However, after their training is over, Krina admits that Alan has gotten a bit tougher than before. Alan is shocked to hear this and immediately checks his grimoire. When he looks at it, he sees that both his endurance and attack skills have been buffed. He starts to wonder if Apo's sweet-smelling aroma might have given him these boosts. However, he has no real way to prove it or test it properly, so for now, he decides to let the thought go. As time goes on, Alan realizes that they now have a lot of hay thanks to Apo. After running a couple of simple tests, Alan finally understands how Apo's skill, Aroma, really works. He learns that Aroma can shorten MP recovery time from 6 hours down to 5 hours. This allows him to do more activities and more summoning in a single day, which is a big advantage for his growth. Even so, Alan cannot help but feel uneasy because it always feels like he never has enough time to do everything he wants and needs to do. Later that night, Alan and his mom start to get worried because Rodden has not come home yet and it is much later than he is supposed to be. The worry slowly turns into fear as more time passes. Then, they suddenly hear loud noises coming from outside. When they rush out to see what is happening, they see several adventurers carrying Rodden on a stretcher. He is clearly badly injured and barely conscious. When they finally bring Rodden inside, Gerda explains what happened. He tells them that Rodden took a boar fang to the gut, which is what left him in such a terrible condition. They managed to keep Rodden alive for now thanks to a special healing herb. Gerda admits that if not for that herb, Rodden would already be dead, even with the herb. However, it is still not enough to fully heal him, and he is left with a large and dangerous wound. Alan asks Gerda how something like this could have happened. Gerda explains that this was not just the fault of a single commoner. Normally, commoners do not even take part in boar hunts because they are far too dangerous. But this year was different. Many commoners volunteered to join the hunt because they had heard stories about Rodden being a great hunting hero. They believed that as long as Rodden was there, they would be safe. Gerda admits that neither he he nor Rodden felt comfortable allowing commoners to come along on such a dangerous hunt. However, since they could not refuse the orders of the chieftain, they had no choice but to let the commoners join, even though it put everyone at greater risk. The commoners were taught the proper formations and tactics for what to do if anything went wrong. However, as soon as things actually did go wrong, fear took over them and they started to panic and break formation. Instead of following the plan, they began to run around in confusion. One of the commoners was just about to get stabbed, but that was when Rodden stepped in and ended up being the one that got stabbed. Later that night, Rodden finally wakes up, and everyone is relieved to see that he made it through. However, Alan cannot help but blame himself. He realizes that he was mostly useless during the crisis. Even though he could have helped more, he understands that he has been too focused on leveling up and improving his own abilities, and because of that, he chose not to pay enough attention to what was happening around him and to the people who needed him. He remembers that he has a family he needs to protect, and he quietly makes it his personal mission to become strong enough to truly protect them. Shortly after, Gerda arrives and drops off Rodden's portion of the meat they hunted. After that, Gerda tells Rodden not to worry about anything during the winter and to focus only on getting better. That is when Alan also speaks up. He tells his dad to rest and take it easy, because from now on, Alan is going to take care of things and provide for the family while Rodden is recovering. The next day, Alan keeps his word. He does hard work like fetching water from the well and carrying it all the way back to fill their reserves. Gerda then shows Alan how to harvest crops from the farm. At first, Gerda thinks the work might be too much for Alan to handle. However, to his surprise, Alan harvests each stem easily and without slowing down. This makes Gerda realize that Alan is a lot stronger than he first thought. Not long after, the chieftain visits their home along with the commoner who caused Rodden's injury. The commoner immediately apologizes to Rodden for what happened. Everyone expects Rodden to be angry or hold a grudge. Instead, to their surprise, Rodden calmly tells him to be more careful next time. Seeing this, Alan feels a deep sense of admiration for his father and realizes how noble and kind he truly is. Later that day, Alan heads to the flower field and clears part of it so he can use the area to set traps to catch some meat. He summons a couple of small frogs and uses them to help put his plan into motion. After setting everything up, Alan hides in the bushes and waits for something to take the bait. He waits for a long time and nothing happens. Alan starts to think it might be over and that his plan failed. Then, suddenly, a giant bird flies in and lands in the cleared area. As Alan takes a closer look, his heart drops. He realizes that this is not just a normal bird. It is an albahiron, a dangerous B-rank monster. Alan only meant to attract small animals and birds, and he never expected something like this to show up. Alan knows he has no real chance of beating a monster like this, so his first thought is to turn around and run for his life. But just then, his system lights up and announces that his enhanced skill has reached level 2. Seeing this, Alan decides that it might be worth taking the risk to test it out on the albahiron. Alan charges in and uses his sword to attack, but the albahiron easily knocks him away. After that, Alan summons several wolves, and they rush forward to bite and attack the albahiron. For a moment, Alan thinks he might actually have a chance to win, but things quickly turn bad when he sees that the albahiron simply eats all of his wolves without much effort. With no other options left, Alan tries to attack again with his sword, but this time he is knocked away even harder than before. The albahiron moves closer and stands over him, clearly trying to eat him. Alan raises his sword to defend himself, his body shaking, as he wonders if this is truly the end for him. As his last resort, he summons 2 leeches, and they immediately begin to suck up some of the albahiron's blood. This starts to weaken the albahiron a little, and it also gives him a short moment to think carefully about what his next move should be. He knows that he is a lot weaker now because he has lost a couple of his summons and buffs, but he believes it should not be a serious problem, because he already has a clear plan to take this beast down with just one strong and final strike. Alan summons his wolves again and orders both the wolves and the leeches to lunge forward and attack at the same time. While they rush in, he jumps in as well and delivers a decisive sword strike directly to the albahiron's head. The attack is strong enough to knock the albahiron down and keep it down for good. His grimoire then notifies him that he has just defeated an albahiron and that he has gained 100 XP. When he sees this message, he gets very hyped up and excited, and he takes a moment to celebrate his victory. After that, Alan takes the albahiron back to his family, and they are both both surprised that someone they used to see as a wimp like him could defeat a D-ranked monster like that completely on his own. Jirda then offers to help him bleed the Albahiron out properly. After tying the Albahiron up, Jirda gives Alan a detailed rundown on how the meat of the beast is supposed to be cut and separated, and he also explains which parts of the monster are safe and edible. Jirda also adds that monsters all have magic stones inside them, and that every magic stone found in any monster above D rank falls under the tax laws of their kingdom. However, Jirda does not really see this as a big problem, since the stone would be useless to poor serfs like them anyway. Even so, Jirda believes that they will be able to get a better price for their share of the meat from the chieftain after they explain that Alan was the one doing the hunting, since his father was injured and unable to do it himself. The next day, at the chieftain's office, the two of them follow through with their plan of using Rodden's injury as leverage. At first, the chieftain insists that they should only receive the smaller cut. However, after they continue to pressure him by reminding him about how badly injured Rodden is and how a kid like Alan had to risk his life, the chieftain finally gives in and agrees to give them a bigger cut, just like they had planned from the beginning. The chieftain tells them that they will be able to keep all of the meat for themselves, while he will only take the wings and the magic stones. However, Alan tries to go the extra mile and asks the chieftain if they will be allowed to continue doing this kind of deal in the future as well. Jirda does his best to help convince the chieftain, and after taking some time to think about it, the chieftain finally agrees to their terms and allows them to continue under the same arrangement. 3 days later, Alan uses the same tactic as last time to face two more Albahirons. The fact that he was able to defeat one before has given him much more confidence, so this time he is able to defeat both of them with the help of his leeches, his wolves, and his wooden sword, and he does it in record time. Alan has been going out to hunt once every 3 days since beating the first one, but this is the first time he did not lose any of his summons, so he is very happy with the results. Alan's grimoire then lights up and acknowledges that he has just defeated 2 Albahirons and gained 200 XP. More importantly, it also informs him that his level has increased and that he has reached level 2. He becomes extremely excited when he sees this and immediately checks his stats. When he looks, he sees that all of his HP and MP have fully recovered after leveling up. However, he also notices that his stat increase is only about 60% of what it should normally be. He does not think too deeply about it, and he assumes that maybe he does not get the full benefits since he has only just reached this level. Even so, he is still very happy and is just glad to see that all of his hard work has finally paid off. As he thinks about it more, he starts to believe that this might be the trial of the gods that Rodden told him about, and he honestly feels amazing about it. He realizes that he will have to let his family know the truth sooner or later. Later that day, Alan arrives back home, and Rodden is surprised to see that he managed to catch 2 Albahirons in a single day. After that, Alan meets up with Krina for some sword training. However, even while he is in the middle of fighting and training, his mind keeps thinking about how and when he is going to hunt more Albahirons. Since it is migration season and there are a lot of Albahirons around, he believes that if he works hard enough, he may be able to reach level 3 by hunting about 20 more of them. Alan's thoughts are suddenly interrupted when Krina lands a heavy blow to his head, which clearly shows that she has won the match. After acknowledging her victory, she simply waves goodbye to him and leaves. Later that night, Alan decides that it is time to let his parents in on the truth about how he has been able to defeat those Albahirons so easily. However, he knows that he cannot tell them that he got pulled into some random game he saw on the internet, because they would definitely think he has gone crazy. Because of that, Alan comes up with a better explanation. He tells them that when he was only 1 year old, he heard an oracle from Elmia, the god of creation. Alan explains to them that an oracle basically means that he is smarter and physically stronger than the average person. On top of that, he says that it also means he will go through trials that go beyond what even 100 men could normally accomplish. Hearing this, Rodden already understands what is going on and can tell that Alan must have already gone through the trial of the gods. Rodden noticed earlier that morning that the cut on Alan's face was already gone, so he realizes that this is the only explanation that makes sense. However, Derja does not understand how this could even be possible, especially since Alan's appraisal results from last year said that he had no talent at all. That is when Alan mentions that he received another oracle from Lord Elmia a few months ago. He explains that the reason his attributes were ranked so low during the appraisal ceremony is because they take the slow progression of his trials into account. He also explains that the reason he was judged to have no talent was because his talent was actually too new to be properly recognized at the time. Rawdon is shocked when he hears this, because it means that Alan actually does have a talent after all. When Rawdon asks Alan what that talent is, Alan tells him that he is not sure, because Lord Elmia did not give him the full details. Alan feels bad about lying to his father, but he knows that he cannot say anything about being a summoner. He is afraid that some people would react the wrong way if they found out that he can summon and control monsters, and he also knows that he definitely cannot tell them anything about being reincarnated. In the end, Derja simply embraces Alan and praises him for being so brave, especially considering how young he is. Rawdon then asks Alan what he plans to do next, and Alan replies that for now, all he wants to do is prove himself worthy by passing all of the trials. Rawdon is proud to hear that answer, but he also tells Alan not to hesitate to ask for help if he ever needs it. Alan thanks both of his parents for being so understanding and for giving him their full support. After that, Rawdon tells Alan that it would be best if he kept this a secret for now, because it would be very bad if people started to mistake him for a false prophet. However, Rawdon says that Gerda will be the only exception, since Gerda is always bragging about how cool Krina is as a sword lord. Rawdon says that now he will finally get the chance to boast about how cool his son is as well. By the time winter comes, Alan takes one of the Albaherones they had stored and begins cutting it up. After that, he heads into town with Gerda to trade the meat for supplies. Gerda has already heard the news about Alan being blessed and tested by Lord Elmia, and Gerda honestly is not surprised at all, because he always believed there was something special about Alan. As they travel together, the two of them continue talking, and Alan brings up the topic of the difference between commoners and serfs. Gerda explains that most of the difference comes down to social status and taxes. He explains that serfs are under a completely different tax system, where they must pay 3 gold coins for each adult and 1 gold coin for each child every year. After hearing that, Alan asks what it would take for a serf to become a commoner. Gerda explains that it would require paying a tribute of 10 gold coins per person in the family. He also mentions that there are rumors about a baron sometimes rewarding people with commoner status, but he makes it clear that those are only rumors. When Alan hears all of this, he realizes that since his mother is about to have another baby, it would take their family 50 gold coins to become commoners, because they will soon be a family of 5. Alan spends the rest of the day trading with Gerda, and he starts to get the hang of how trading works. By the end of the day, he walks back home with a large bundle of firewood on his back. Realizing that he now mostly understands how bartering works, he also realizes that he can do some market research the next time he comes into town. The next time Alan goes trading, he does it all by himself. While there, he carefully documents the market value and barter value for every single item so that he can use that information to help himself in the future. Later, Alan walks into a herb shop and asks the merchant if there is any medicine that can recover MP. The merchant immediately responds that they do not have anything like that, because such items are far too expensive for the shop to carry. That said, Alan just takes a look around at all of the herbs and medicines on the shelves, and he realizes that it would be extremely difficult to document all of them manually. So, he focuses very hard and, just by thinking about it, ends up drawing all of the herbs into his grimoire without touching anything physically. After that, Alan asks the merchant if he has any Mueller's flowers in stock. However, the merchant suddenly gets very worked up at hearing that name because of the last time he sold one. The merchant explains that some time ago, Gerda burst into the shop and demanded to buy a Mueller's flower. He insisted on getting it because a friend of his was sick, but he did not even pay in full at the time and promised to pay the rest later. The merchant still has not received the full payment, and on top of that, it was the last Mueller's flower in stock. That is what upsets the merchant the most. Alan hears this and realizes that Gerda came into the shop to buy the very herb that ended up saving Rawdon's life after he was attacked that night. If the merchant had simply refused to sell it, Alan figures that he might not have a father anymore. To show his appreciation, Alan gifts the merchant some Albaherone jerky and thanks him sincerely for his kindness, after which he leaves the shop. On his way back, Alan is busy checking out some weapons in town when he runs into the same kid from the appraisal ceremony who had gained the axe talent, Dogora, and the chieftain's son, Pelmoas. Alan knows that Dogora is nothing but trouble, so he tries to mind his own business and leave quietly. However, Dagora smacks him on the head and immediately demands that Alan become his minion. In response, Alan pulls out his wooden sword and points it directly at Dagora. Dagora becomes flustered and complains that it is unfair because he does not have a weapon. Alan tells him that he is willing to fight fairly, so Dagora should go get any weapon of his choice while Alan waits right here. Dagora returns shortly after with a sword and charges at Alan, but Alan easily dodges and blocks all of his attacks. Dagora's strikes are strong, which makes sense since he is an axe user, but even so, his strength hardly compares to Krina's. Alan decides to end the duel quickly, knocks the sword out of Dagora's hand, and wins the fight. He simply acknowledges his victory and walks off nonchalantly, which makes Dagora even more furious. Later that night, Alan returns home, and Rodden is seen removing his bandages. This suggests that he is back in top shape and ready to continue hunting. Derja, however, warns him not to overdo it and risk pulling a muscle. The next day, at Krina's house, Dagora shows up again to challenge Alan to a rematch. He loses badly several times, but his ego refuses to let him accept defeat, so he keeps asking for more rematches. Meanwhile, Alan's younger brother, Mash, has already started sword training with Krina, which makes Alan excited to see how Mash will perform at the appraisal ceremony in 2 years. After some time, the new baby is born, and the family decides to name her Mila. Later, Rodden returns home from a hunt with Gerda, only to announce that the family is being summoned by the chieftain. Apparently, the chieftain wants them to increase the number of boars they deliver to the Baron from 10 to 15. To make that happen, the chieftain wants them to allow the commoners to join in on the hunt again this year. Derja thinks that this request is ridiculous, especially since Rodden suffered a terrible injury during the last hunt. Rodden admits that he wanted to decline, but it turns out that this was not a request. It was an order directly from the Baron. If they do not deliver 15 boars by winter this year, the Empire will recruit more serfs from elsewhere. Hearing this, Alan immediately understands that more serfs would mean less land to go around, which would put those who cannot hunt at risk of losing their land. Gerda adds that the worst part of it is that the Baron wants them to deliver 20 boars by the end of next year. Rodden figures that the only way to meet that demand is to hunt more often than the usual once every 10 days. Alan then speaks up and suggests that they simply follow the Baron's order. Gerda tells him not to interrupt when adults are speaking, but Rodden stops her and allows Alan to continue. Alan explains that they cannot refuse a direct order from the Baron, so even if the commoners end up being dead weight, they need to find a way to make that dead weight useful. Based on his past experience with games, Alan knows that making characters as useful as possible, even when they do not seem capable, is his specialty. He tells them to trust him and let him handle the situation. He reminds them that he was blessed with wisdom from Lord Elmia, and because of that blessing, he believes he has a plan that might actually work. The next day, Alan and Rodden meet up with the commoners who will be joining them on the hunt. When the commoners see Alan, they are surprised that a little kid like him is tagging along to hunt. Rodden explains that the plan is for everyone to adopt his hunting strategy, while Alan will simply tag along to watch and learn. Alan assures the others that he will not get in anyone's way, and then bows to thank them for allowing him to come along. Even though he feels a little upset about not being able to participate fully in the hunt, Alan reasons that the most important thing right now is to train the new hunters. He wants them to gain the experience necessary to help the group hunt more boars in the future, because he does not want anyone to get hurt like his father did during last year's hunt. One of the commoners approaches Rodden and apologizes for the injury he caused him last year. Rodden does not hold any ill feelings about it and tells him that it is no big deal. Instead, he tells everyone to focus on the goal ahead and not dwell on past mistakes. After that, the gate to the forest is opened, and they all begin to make their way inside, starting the hunt. As they enter the forest, Alan realizes that after 7 long years of being a serf, this is the first time he is leaving the village. In his mind, this is a small but significant step toward eventually freeing his family from the life of serfs. What excites him even more is the thought of seeing the White Dragon Mountains. According to legend, a mythical white dragon lives somewhere near those mountains, and Alan has always dreamed of catching a glimpse of it. Shortly after, the hunt is about to begin. Everyone assumes their positions as a giant boar charges into view. When the moment is right, the bait team positions themselves to lure the boar in a certain direction. Following them, the tank team moves in to hold the boar in place, preventing it from escaping hitting or attacking anyone dangerously. Finally, the strike team arrives to deliver the final blow. Alan carefully observes the entire process and realizes that this is the exact hunting technique that his father and other experienced hunters have been using for over 10 years to successfully capture and kill boars. He thinks to himself that it is a carefully planned and executed strategy, and it is actually very impressive to watch in action. Once the boar is finally slain, the commoners feel an immense sense of pride. They understand that successfully hunting the boar is equivalent to passing the trial of the gods, marking their achievement and skill. Alan estimates that because the boar is a C-rank monster, the commoners must have earned a considerable amount of experience points from this hunt. Curious, he pulls out his grimoire to see exactly how many points he received. Unfortunately, he finds that he did not gain any experience points at all. He thinks it over and realizes that this makes sense, since he did not participate in the fighting and had only observed the hunt from a safe distance. Nevertheless, Alan feels satisfied watching the commoners gain experience and grow more confident in their abilities. After that is finished, Alan starts making small talk with some of the villagers. They begin talking about the different kinds of meat they have gotten from monsters they hunted in the past. One of the men mentions that he would be more than happy to help carve up any monster meat Alan manages to get his hands on. Alan listens carefully and decides to accept the offer. He takes the man over to his stash of albahirones and asks him if he can help butcher them properly. Of course, the man does not plan to do the work for free. Alan offers him a deal instead. For every albahirone the man butchers, Alan will give him 2 packs of meat as payment. The man is surprised by how generous the offer is and immediately agrees to it without hesitation. Alan's main reason for doing this is simple. He is still working toward earning 50 gold so he can free his family from serfdom. If he had to hire a professional butcher, it would cost him even more money. By making this deal, he saves gold while still getting the meat prepared properly. Not long after that, the hunt begins again. This time, they decide to change their strategy. Instead of hunting as one large group, they split into smaller teams. By doing this, they are able to double the number of boars they hunt in a shorter amount of time. Even so, Alan still cannot understand why the Baron is so insistent on gathering more boars this year than ever before. Still, since the Baron is the one in charge, everyone has no choice but to follow his orders. Suddenly, one of the boars charges straight toward them. Gerda reacts immediately and leads the attack. He strikes the boar head-on and delivers a powerful, fatal blow. After that, he calls out to the new hunters and tells them to step in and finish it. When they do, they feel proud of themselves once again for completing the hunt successfully. Last time, Alan did not receive any increase in his stats, but this time is different. He checks his status carefully and is shocked with joy when he sees that his stats have increased and that he has even advanced to level 3. He realizes how he managed to do it. The method was simple, but very effective. He figured out that if one of the creatures he summons makes contact with a monster before it is killed, then he is counted as a participant in the battle. At the last possible moment, Alan summoned Denka and caused the boar to step on him, creating contact. This allowed Alan to gain experience, but it also resulted in Denka being killed. As Denka slowly floats up into the sky, Alan apologizes to him sincerely. Even so, he cannot help but admit to himself that the outcome was worth it. 3 months later, Alan and Krina are invited to the chieftain's house to celebrate the new year. After spending some time there, they return home to celebrate the holiday properly, surrounded by plenty of food. Gerda and his wife also come over to join them. Everyone eats together, laughs, and enjoys the warm atmosphere. While they are eating, Gerda asks Alan if the chieftain said anything about them. Alan replies that the chieftain was very thankful for all the hard work they have been doing and made sure to express his appreciation clearly. Rodden already expected this outcome because he knew they would not have any trouble reaching the quota of 20 boars that he suggested for the year. Alan then points out that the chieftain was so pleased with how well everything was going that he rewarded him with a bottle of liquor. Alan knows very well how much Rodden and Gerda love liquor and how wild they tend to get whenever alcohol is involved. Because of this, Alan decides to use the bottle to his advantage and comes up with an idea. Alan proposes a contest. He explains that if he wins, he will be allowed to properly join the hunt next time, wield a spear, and fight alongside them as an equal. However, if Rodden and Gerda win, they get to keep the liquor for themselves. The moment he explains the rules, they realize too late that they have already fallen into Alan's trap. Even so, their desire for the liquor is too strong, so they decide to accept the challenge anyway. They ask Alan what kind of competition he has in mind. Alan calmly replies that he wants it to be an arm wrestling contest. Both Rawdon and Gerda are shocked that Alan would even suggest something like that. To them, it seems obvious that they would be far stronger than a child like him. Still, because they really want the liquor, they agree to the contest without backing out. What they do not know is that Alan has been planning ahead. He has been saving several strength buff cards specifically for a moment like this. Because of that, he is confident that he can win, even against adults like Gerda and Rawdon. Gerda steps forward first to take on the challenge. He fully expects the match to be an easy win and does not take Alan very seriously at the start. However, as the contest begins, Gerda quickly realizes that Alan is much stronger than he expected. Alan holds his ground firmly, refusing to give in. Gerda puts up a strong fight and pushes back with all his might, but in the end, Alan manages to overpower him and win the match. After the contest, Alan thinks carefully and estimates that Gerda's strength stat must be somewhere between 150 and 200. Next, it is Rawdon's turn. Alan can tell right away that Rawdon is on a completely different level. While Alan's strength is somewhat close, Rawdon's power far surpasses his. No matter how hard Alan tries, Rawdon steadily pushes him down and wins the arm wrestling match. With the contest decided, Alan keeps his promise and hands over the bottle of liquor. Rawdon and Gerda happily accept it, and soon they are all drinking together and enjoying themselves. Although Alan did not get the result he wanted, the contest was not a waste. It helped him understand his own limits. He now knows that Gerda is roughly around D rank strength, while Rawdon is closer to C rank. Rawdon then tells Alan that he will not allow him to hunt boars until Alan can defeat him in strength. Rather than feeling discouraged, Alan accepts the challenge, determined to grow stronger and earn his place in the hunt. A little while later, Alan is pleased to notice that his summoner level has gone up once again. Curious, he immediately opens his grimoire to check what has changed. As he flips through the pages, he is amazed by the number of new skills that have appeared. One skill in particular completely catches his attention. He has gained the ability to freely view E-ranked cards whenever he wants. Alan instantly understands how valuable this ability is. With easier access to E-ranked cards, he is certain that his overall strength will rise quickly. In his mind, he is already confident that with this advantage alone, he should now be capable of challenging Rawdon again and possibly winning next time. However, as he continues examining the grimoire more closely, he notices something strange. There is a new page that was not there before. When he flips to it, he sees what looks like an empty cavity carved directly into the page itself. After experimenting a little, he realizes that this is a storage skill. He can store items inside the grimoire as long as they physically fit within the cavity. The storage space seems to stretch deeper than it looks, making it far more useful than it first appears. Alan is confused. Storage is a god-tier skill, something extremely rare and powerful. He cannot help but wonder why he would be given such an ability at this specific point in time. The timing feels deliberate, as if someone intended for him to receive it now. The next day, Alan decides to experiment with his new E-ranked summons. He takes out a magic stone and activates his summoning skill. The first creature he summons is an E-ranked insect, which turns out to be a brightly colored butterfly with shimmering wings. It is harmless but strangely magical in appearance. Next, Alan summons another E-ranked creature. This time, it is a saber-toothed tiger. The moment it appears, Alan instinctively takes a step back. The creature is intimidating, with sharp fangs and a powerful build. After watching it for a while, however, Alan realizes that it poses no threat to him. Slowly, he grows accustomed to its presence and decides to give it a name. He calls the tiger Tama and formally welcomes him as part of his growing team. Afterward, Alan attempts to fuse two of his summons. That is when he notices a major limitation. Each fusion requires a magic stone. With this realization, he understands that from now on, he will need a large supply of magic stones if he wants to continue growing stronger. The only way he knows how to obtain magic stones is by hunting horned rabbits. Later that night, he brings this up with his father. Unfortunately, Rawdon tells him that horned rabbits will not be appearing anytime soon. A ditch was dug around the village some time ago, preventing monsters from entering. This means Alan no longer has an easy way to gather magic stones. Disappointed, Alan spends the night thinking about alternatives. The following day, while Krina is once again training and kicking Dogora's butt, but Alan is busy speaking with Pelmoas and asks if he knows anything about magic stones. Pelmoas, who is knowledgeable about such matters, explains that D and C ranked magic stones are usually found in the royal capital and are considered valuable. On the other hand, E ranked magic stones are almost worthless and can sometimes be found lying around. To prove his point, Pelmoas casually picks one up from the ground and hands it to Alan before walking away. This single act fills Alan with renewed hope. He realizes that if E-ranked magic stones are that common, he can simply gather them himself. Over time, with help from the villagers, Alan manages to collect a large number of E-ranked magic stones. Using them, he successfully creates all of his E-ranked summons. As he finishes summoning them, a boar suddenly charges toward him. Without hesitation, his summons react instantly and kill it in one swift motion. Alan briefly celebrates, but then another boar appears. Once again, one of his summons steps in and protects him. At that moment, Alan suddenly opens his eyes. He realizes everything he just witnessed was a hallucination. Closing his eyes again, he reflects on the past 7 years. There was no guidebook for summoners, no teacher to instruct him. He has been forced to figure everything out on his own. Through this realization, Alan understands that each summon has a specific role. Insect types are used to apply debuffs. Beasts specialize in offense. Birds are meant for gathering intel. Grass types handle healing, and stone types are focused on defense. When combined, they allow him to fulfill every role of a standard party entirely by himself. That is what makes a summoner truly powerful. He now understands why he was given the storage skill. It exists so he can store the countless magic stones he will need. With an army of creatures at his command, Alan believes that a summoner may be stronger than even the demon lord himself. Sometime later, Alan, Rodden, and Gerda attend an early meeting with a chieftain. During the meeting, the chieftain informs them that the Baron has taken a strong interest in their recent success with the boar hunts. Because of this, he now wishes to come and witness the hunts in person. Gerda becomes visibly upset when she hears this news. This is the same Baron who demanded an unreasonable number of boars to be hunted in the first place. Now he wants to come and watch as if it is some kind of performance. Rodden, however, does not seem bothered by the idea of the Baron visiting. Instead, he is more confused about why Alan has been asked to attend the meeting as well. The chieftain explains that since the Baron is coming, he wants Alan to act as his guide. Alan will be responsible for showing him around the village, entertaining him, and explaining how the hunts are carried out. Gerda does not understand why Alan must be the one to handle this task. He asks why the chieftain cannot simply have his own son, Palomas, do it instead. In response, the chieftain explains that Palomas is not the most suitable person for such a responsibility. He has heard that it was Alan's clever ideas that led to the recent success in the boar hunts. Because of that, he believes Alan would be perfect for the role. He then directly asks Alan if he is willing to do it. Alan takes a moment to think. He realizes that he does not care about pleasing the Baron personally. What truly matters to him is freeing his family from serfdom. If he continues hunting boars the traditional way, it will take 10 years to earn enough to raise their status to that of commoners. However, he also remembers that social status can sometimes be granted directly by the Baron as a reward. With that possibility in mind, Alan agrees to serve as the Baron's guide. A few days later, Baron Granville arrives in the town with his daughter, Cecil. They are escorted by Zinoff and several knights. The chieftain welcomes them warmly. Soon after, everyone goes inside for dinner. After some light conversation, Baron Granville brings up the topic of the boar hunt. He apologizes to the chieftain for the sudden and heavy demand for boars. He explains that he understands the target is difficult to meet, but he had no choice because the order came directly from the king. The chieftain responds that he understands the situation and holds no resentment over it. As they begin eating, everyone comments on how delicious the food tastes. Cecil is especially impressed and asks what kind of meat is being served. Alan politely explains that it is Albahiron meat from a fresh one he hunted just the day before. He then takes the opportunity to introduce himself as the Baron's guide for the visit and says that it is a great honor to serve him. Baron Granville is impressed by Alan's manners and assumes he must be the chieftain Deboji's son. However, Deboji corrects him and explains that Alan is actually Rodden's son, one of the finest boar hunters in the village. Zinoff immediately recognizes the name Rodden and remembers Alan from their previous encounter. Baron Granville, however, is unfamiliar with them. He asks whether Rodden was once a member of the knighthood. Deboji clarifies that Rodden and his family are actually serfs. Upon hearing this, Cecil becomes irritated. She questions why someone like Alan was allowed to even be in the same room as them. Baron Granvelle immediately corrects her. He tells her firmly that she must not speak about or to serfs as if they are animals. Realizing her mistake, she accepts the correction and immediately apologizes to her father. But even after being corrected, she continues to give Alan the stink eye. She says nothing more, but her expression makes her feelings obvious. Setting that aside, Zenoff turns his attention to Alan and says he hopes Alan is prepared to explain how the hunt will proceed the next day. Zenoff understands that hunting 20 boars is a very ambitious target. He adds that if the task proves too difficult for the serfs, the knights will step in and take over. Cecil then announces that she will also be joining the hunt. She says she wants to see what a boar looks like up close. Hearing Zenoff's earlier remark, Alan realizes that Zenoff still doubts the ability of the serfs. In response, Alan calmly states that 20 boars are not a large number for them. He assures everyone that they will have no trouble meeting their quota, and tomorrow's hunt will serve as clear proof of their skill. The following day, they all head into the forest where the hunt is set to take place. Alan, along with Baron Granvelle and his entourage, is seated on a raised platform built high above the ground. From there, they can safely observe the entire operation. Soon after, the hunters step forward and prepare to begin. One of them runs into the forest wearing light armor crafted from boar horns and pelts. This method is designed to lure the boars out of hiding. The scent and appearance provoke the animals, causing one to charge out of the trees. As soon as the boar emerges, the defense team moves quickly. They surround it with thick, reinforced shields, boxing it in and limiting its movement. The animal struggles, but it cannot break through the formation. Next, the strike team advances. They thrust their spears into the boar from multiple angles, weakening it with precise and controlled attacks. After several well-placed strikes, Rawdon steps forward and delivers the final blow by driving a spear into the boar's neck. Baron Granvelle watches carefully and is visibly impressed. He admits that he did not expect such coordination and efficiency from them. However, the situation suddenly changes. Two boars burst out of the forest at the same time. Seeing this, Zenoff assumes the hunters will be overwhelmed. He instructs Leibran to have the knights ready to intervene. Before the order can be carried out, Alan calmly stops him. He explains that the hunters have specifically trained for situations like this. There is no need for concern. Just as Alan predicted, the hunters react without panic. They quickly divide into two groups and repeat the same strategy with discipline and precision. Each group surrounds a boar, restrains it, and strikes in coordinated fashion. Within moments, both animals are taken down successfully. Cecil watches the entire scene unfold. The blood and violence prove to be too much for her, so she just passes out from the shock. Shortly after that, the two boars were defeated. Granvelle stepped forward and looked over the scene. He counted quietly and realizes this means 3 boars have been defeated in total, so he says there are still 17 boars left to reach the quota of 20. Alan calmly corrected him. He explained that before Granvelle arrived, they had already taken down 7 boars. That meant only 10 were left. Granvelle was clearly impressed by this. He began to see that the villagers were far more capable than he first believed. In fact, he started to think that they might not even need the knights to finish the job. With the hunt moving forward, Alan told Granvelle that he had 2 requests. First, he asked for permission to build more shield walls to support the hunt. The walls had proven useful, and with more of them, they could protect the hunters and control the boars more safely. For his second request, Alan asked for the proper procurement and distribution of liquor within the serfs. Granvelle looked confused when he heard this. Liquor did not seem directly related to hunting. Alan explained his reasoning in simple terms. Because more and more boars were being hunted in their village, there was now an abundance of meat. If the villagers continued to trade only meat among themselves, the value of the meat would fall. There would be too much supply and not enough demand. This could lead to a market crash inside the village economy. However, if another product such as liquor were introduced into trade, it would create balance. It would give the villagers something else to exchange and help stabilize prices. In addition, liquor would help maintain the morale of the hunters after long and dangerous days. Zenoff considered the requests and found them reasonable. Granvelle also agreed that Alan's logic made sense. He said he would consider both requests favorably. He then commended Alan for his performance during the hunt. He stated that Alan showed leadership and intelligence beyond his years. He could clearly see that Alan had great potential for the future. It was time for Granvelle and his group to leave. As Cecil mounted her horse. She looked at Alan and told him not to let the praise from her father go to his head. After saying that, she rode off alongside Sebas, the butler. Alan simply watched them leave. He was relieved that she had finally left and assumed that it was likely the last time he would see her. Later that day, Alan, Rawdon, and Gerda were summoned. They knelt before Granvelle as he addressed them formally. He praised them for their outstanding performance during the hunt. He stated that their coordination and discipline were worthy of recognition. Because of their success, he had decided to elevate their families from serf status to commoner status. When Alan heard this, he could hardly contain his joy. For 8 long years, he had dreamed of this moment. Becoming a commoner meant freedom. It meant opportunity. It meant that he would no longer be tied to the limitations of serf life. He would finally be allowed to travel beyond the village. In his mind, he had already decided where he would go first. He wanted to visit the White Dragon Mountains. His goal there would be dragon hunting. That dream had lived inside him for years. Granvelle then explained another matter. The king intended to use their village as an example for the rest of the kingdom. Because of this, he requested a full explanation of how the boar hunts began in the first place. Rawdon's expression turned sour at the mention of this topic. Gerda gently explained that it was a painful memory for Rawdon. He asked if he could speak in Rawdon's place. Granvelle agreed without objection. Gerda began to explain the history. 13 years ago, around 100 serfs from nearby villages came to their land. This was part of the reclamation decree, which ordered the development of unused land. The group worked hard for 6 months. They cleared forests, prepared the soil, and planted crops. Slowly, their efforts began to show results. The fields were growing well, and the future seemed promising. Then disaster struck. A massive boar appeared without warning. It charged through the fields and destroyed the crops they had spent months growing. The entire harvest was ruined. The loss was devastating. The villagers fell into deep despair. It was during this time of hopelessness that Rawdon proposed a bold idea. Instead of living in fear of the boars, they should hunt them. At that time, they lacked proper weapons and advanced tools. Even so, they gathered what they could and prepared themselves. Through teamwork and determination, they managed to kill their first boar. After hearing the full story, Granvelle wondered why Rawdon had been so reluctant to share it. From his point of view, it was a story of courage and determination. It was something Rawdon should have been proud of. Gerda calmly explained that during that very first boar hunt, one of their comrades died. The memory of that loss still weighed heavily on Rawdon. Gerda said he had told Rawdon many times not to blame himself, but Rawdon refused to let go of the guilt. Granvelle understood and apologized for bringing up such a painful memory. To make up for it, he decided to offer Rawdon a reward. He told him to make a wish, and whatever it was, he would grant it. When Alan heard this, he felt excited. To him, this sounded like a bonus opportunity. He assumed Rawdon would ask for something simple, such as liquor for the village. Instead, Rawdon made a different request. He asked Granvelle to allow Alan to work at his estate. The moment Alan heard this, his heart sank. This was not what he wanted. If he spent his days running errands at the estate, he would never get the chance to chase his dream of seeing the outside world. Becoming tied down to estate work would only slow him down. Before Alan could react, Granvelle told Rawdon that Alan was too capable to simply work as a laborer at the estate. Instead, he proposed that Alan become a manservant to the Granvelle family. This position would mean serving the family directly and living within their residence. Rawdon was stunned. Being offered such a role was a great honor. It meant trust and recognition. Alan would not just work at the estate, he would be part of the household. Cecil, however, did not look pleased when she heard this. She clearly did not welcome the idea. Alan's mind raced as he tried to think of a way to refuse. He did not want to give up his freedom, but when he looked at his father's face and saw how proud and happy he was, he hesitated. This meant a better future for their family. In the end, Alan decided to accept it. The next day, preparations were made for Alan to leave for the Baron's estate. The village gathered to see him off. Many were sad, especially his brother Mash. Mash cried openly and said he would miss him. His sister Mula was still too young to fully understand what was happening, so she remained quiet and calm. Krina was also saddened by his departure. To say goodbye in their own way, they decided to have one final duel, just like they used to. The villagers formed a circle and watched carefully. As the duel went on, people began to notice something unusual. Alan was slowly gaining the upper hand. Normally, Krina was the stronger fighter and almost always won. The reason for this change was something Alan had kept to himself. He had used 20 magic stones to craft a hawk. This magical creation had greatly increased his agility. He was now faster and more precise twice than before. That boost allowed him to match and even surpass Krina during the duel. In the end, Alan won. However, he did not claim full victory. He called it a draw and said they would settle it properly the next time they met. Krina smiled at that and seemed comforted by his words. After the duel, Dogora approached Alan. Without saying much, he handed him a dagger as a farewell gift. Dogora clearly did not want to show his emotions. He avoided eye contact and walked away quickly after giving it to him. Finally, it was time to leave. The entire village gathered as Alan walked beside his parents toward the exit. His parents reminded him that he was hardworking and capable, but they told him not to push himself too hard. They advised him to ask for help when needed and to take care of himself. When they reached the village gates, his parents gave him a brief goodbye. There were no long speeches. The meaning was clear in their expressions. Alan stepped into the Baron's carriage. As it began to move away from the village, he looked back one last time. The familiar homes, the fields, and the people who had shaped his life slowly grew distant. A single tear rolled down his face, not from sadness alone, but from relief and determination. He understood that leaving the village was not the end. It was another step forward. A couple of days later, Alan commences his duties as a manservant and arrives at the Granvelle estate, and he is immediately surprised at just how large and beautiful the estate is. He's never been in an environment this nice before, so it all takes him by surprise. However, his amazement is quickly interrupted as Cecil immediately starts taking advantage of him, climbing onto his shoulders and using him like a stool to pluck fruit from a high branch. Alan is extremely frustrated by this and is on the verge of throwing her off, but he decides to endure it because his entire family is depending on him to keep this job, and he can't afford to make a mistake. After she finally gets down, she bites into the fruit and immediately shows her displeasure because it is really sour. Just at that moment, an airship flies past overhead, and it's the first time Alan has ever seen one. He is completely amazed, as he has only ever read about airships before, so seeing one in real life makes him extremely excited and happy. Despite having only just arrived at the estate, he begins to think that being a manservant isn't as bad as he had originally feared. The next day, Alan wakes up full of energy, ready to start the day and perform his duties properly. He heads downstairs to the maid headquarters, where he is introduced to the head servant, a calm and chill guy named Rickley. After Alan approaches him, Rickley asks how he has been getting along with Cecil, and from Alan's expression, Rickley can immediately tell that it has been pretty rough. Rickley sympathizes with Alan and explains that things wouldn't be so difficult if he were serving as a hall boy instead of a manservant. Alan, still confused about the difference, decides to ask for clarification. Rickley patiently explains that there are different ranks of servants in the estate, primarily divided into senior rank and junior rank. Although manservants are part of the junior rank, they are still considered members of the family and are included in household matters, treated with respect and dignity. Hall boys, on the other hand, are also junior rank but are not considered part of the family. They are merely occasional helpers who assist when needed and have no familial status. Alan is surprised to learn that some servants are considered part of the royal family and included in their activities. After hearing this, he finally understands why his father had been moved to tears of joy. Granvelle was kind enough not just to hire him, but to make him a member of the family, giving him a status and respect that is truly special and meaningful. Shortly after that, Alan serves breakfast to the royal family, carefully arranging each dish and making sure everything is to their liking. The First Lady is immediately impressed with how quickly Alan has picked up on his servant duties. She had never expected a former serf like him to display such impeccable manners, attentiveness, and precision. Granvelle, noticing Alan's diligence, brings up the fact that Alan doesn't possess a talent, and that catches Cecil's attention immediately. She seizes the opportunity to flex on him, proudly declaring that she has the wizardess talent, while her brother Mihai is a swordsman. Granvelle, however, quickly yells at her, reminding her never to brag about talents, prompting Cecil to sheepishly correct herself. Shortly after, one of Granvelle's daughters, Thomas, begins to cry because she too lacks a talent like Alan. Granvelle comforts her gently, assuring her that she will still have the opportunity to attend the Nobles' College in the royal capital. He shares that he himself was born without a talent, which is why he attended the Nobles College, and that it was there he met her mother and began his family. Hearing this, Thomas tries her best to cheer up, bolstered by her father's example and reassurance. With that settled, Alan enjoys having the afternoon off and decides to head into the town to explore. He is immediately fascinated by how much larger and more advanced the town is compared to his village. As he looks around, his eyes catch the Adventurer Guild, and he hurries inside to see if he can register as an adventurer. When he speaks to the receptionist and tells her he is only 8 years old, she shakes her head and informs him that the minimum age to register is 12. Undeterred, Alan decides that this won't stop him from pursuing his monster hunting dreams. He heads over to the notice board to gather information about monsters in the area, studying the postings carefully and noting which creatures appear frequently, including mentions of the legendary white dragon. As Alan examines the board, an adventurer named Raven approaches him and harshly tells him to leave, insisting that this is no place for a child to linger. Alan almost complies, but he quickly realizes that this encounter is an opportunity to gain information from a real adventurer. Using a few clever mind games and questions, he manages to extract detailed knowledge about the monsters listed on the notice board, including their strengths, habits, and weaknesses. Just as he finishes, Raven's comrades arrive, signaling that it's time for Alan to leave. He departs, satisfied that he now has all the information he needs to begin tackling his next goal. The next morning, Alan heads for the town gates to venture outside, only to be stopped by one of the guards. He quickly presents his servant pass, and the guard, recognizing its authority, steps aside and opens the gate for him. After reaching a certain point, Alan notices with some disappointment that he hasn't run into any monsters along the way, so he decides he'll need to search for them instead. Thinking quickly, he summons 5 hawks and sends them out to scout the nearby area for any signs of monsters. After a short while, one of the hawks returns, indicating that it has located some creatures. Following the hawk's lead, Alan discovers a small group of goblins nearby. Without wasting any time, he summons 5 saber-toothed tigers, which charge forward and annihilate the goblins with ease. Alan even manages to deal the final blow to one goblin by hurling a rock, which makes him laugh in triumph. Defeating all the goblins earns him 1000 XP, and he is elated at the progress he's making. He collects the magic stones dropped by the goblins and stores them carefully, then commands the hawks to continue scouting for more targets. The hawks soon locate another group of goblins, and Alan uses his remaining summons to wipe them out efficiently. One by one, they fall, and by the end of the day, Alan has earned over 16,000 XP. He jumps in joy, declaring this the best day off ever because he leveled up twice. On top of the experience gained, he also acquires valuable buffs for his summons and collects more useful information about magic stones and the behavior of D-rank monsters. Despite it being night, Alan still feels energetic and instructs the hawks to find the next target. However, the hawks refuse because it's too dark to see. Realizing that he had been relying on the hawks to guide him back, Alan suddenly understands that he's lost in the woods with no clear way out. After some struggle, he eventually manages to navigate his way back home. About a month later, he stops by one of the blacksmith's store in town to purchase iron balls for hunting, paying a total of 60 silver coins. He feels a sense of pride, knowing he has already reached level 12 in such a short span of time. After spending a day wandering through town, Alan finally returns home to find Sebas waiting for him. Sebas informs him that Granvelle wishes to speak with him. Alan goes to Granvelle's office, where Granvelle commends him for his impeccable service as a servant. However, Granvelle also voices concern about Alan's activities on his days off, noting that he always leaves early in the morning and returns very late at night. Alan understands why they would be concerned and decides to be completely honest. He explains that he has been using his free time to hunt monsters, as hunting runs in his blood. Being the son of a boar hunter, Granvelle is genuinely impressed, especially since he had assumed Alan had simply been goofing off during his time off. To formalize this, they decide that all the meat Alan hunts will be bought for 1 silver per piece. Alan is thrilled to hear this, realizing that he can now pursue his hunting passion while earning money at the same time. 6 months later, Alan is back in the forest as usual, preparing to hunt more goblins. Suddenly, his hawks swoop over to him, behaving unusually and acting more agitated than usual. Sensing something is wrong, Alan immediately runs in the direction the hawks are leading him and discovers Raven and his party under attack by a group of goblins. Raven has already sustained fatal injuries, freeze, leaving his comrades, Rita and Milsai, to fend off the attackers. Alan carefully observes the situation and realizes that he can't summon his creatures in front of them without causing chaos, so this time he decides to fight personally. He and Rita coordinate their attacks, using their weapons to take down the remaining goblins. The fight is effortless for Alan, as he has leveled up significantly. His strength and agility are now over 300, allowing him to handle D-rank monsters with ease. Even after the monsters are defeated, Raven's injuries are severe, and Alan sees that immediate action is necessary. He pulls out a healing flower and applies it to Raven, instantly patching up his wounds and restoring him to full health. Raven recognizes Alan as the same boy he had seen at the Adventurer Guild recently and expresses his heartfelt gratitude for saving him. Just as Alan prepares to leave, Raven's party calls him back, insisting that he let them repay his help in some way. Alan doesn't desire anything extravagant, so he requests that they gather 100 E-rank magic stones for him, to which they readily agree, promising to have them ready by the following week. After parting ways, Alan returns to confront Hawkins about why he had flown beyond the 3-kilometer limit he had explicitly set. Observing Hawkins' expression, Alan realizes that the hawk had gone further out of compassion, wanting to help the adventurers in danger. He had always assumed his summons merely followed orders, but now he understands that they possess feelings and discretion. Acknowledging this, Alan pats Hawkins on the head and apologizes for his earlier tone, assuring him he didn't intend to scold him harshly. Hawkins accepts the apology, and Alan's bond with his summons feels strengthened. With that matter settled, Alan resumes his duties as a manservant, once again enduring Lady Cecil using him as a makeshift stool to get some jam off the top shelf. Alan does this, maintaining his balance between service and adventure with the same dedication as always. Some time later, Christmas arrives, and the noble family gathers together for dinner. As they begin eating, they immediately notice how delicious the meat tastes. The flavor is rich and tender. It is revealed that the meat comes from a horned rabbit that Alan hunted himself. Zenoff praises Alan, saying he expected nothing less from the son of Rodden. During the meal, Zenoff also announces that the village has successfully met its hunting quota of 20 boars. Alan feels pleased hearing this news. However, he is not surprised. He never once doubted his father's ability to achieve the goal. Thomas, however, complains. He points out that despite so many boars being hunted, none of the meat has been served to them. Granvelle immediately scolds him, telling him not to be selfish and to be grateful for what they already have. Alan overhears this exchange. He finds it both harsh and slightly ironic. In truth, the serfs working the land often eat more meat than the son of a noble family. Still craving something more impressive, Thomas turns to Alan and asks him to hunt a white deer for him. Without hesitation, Alan agrees. Alan recalls that white deer are C-rank monsters, roughly equal in strength to boars. He understands that defeating one will not be simple. However, he enjoys challenges, and this only motivates him further. With that in mind, Alan heads into the snowy forest. He begins by digging a deep ditch in the snow, carefully preparing a trap. Before long, Hawkins flies down and informs him that he has located a white deer nearby. Alan quickly puts his plan into motion. He summons his hopper squad of frogs and positions them in front of the deer to draw its attention. The white deer notices the frogs and charges toward them, attempting to crush them. Just before impact, Alan makes the frogs disappear. Moments later, he summons them again in front of the deer. The deer charges once more, and again the frogs vanish at the last second. After repeating this several times, the white deer becomes furious. Enraged, it continues chasing the frogs without thinking. The chase leads it directly toward the hidden ditch Alan prepared earlier. Unable to stop in time, the white deer falls straight into the trap. Alan allows himself a small moment of celebration. His plan worked perfectly. He then approaches the trapped deer, pulls out his knife, and carefully carves it up. Later that day, at the Granvelle mansion, the guards suddenly rush to the front gate. They spot what appears to be a white deer approaching and prepare to attack. But then Alan steps out from beneath the carcass he is carrying and quickly tells them to stand down. The white deer is not a threat. It is a gift for Thomas. The Granvelle family comes outside to see the commotion. Thomas is overjoyed. Alan kept his promise and successfully hunted a white deer for him. Granvelle is visibly surprised. Capturing such a powerful C-rank monster is no small feat. Turning to Sebas, Granvelle quietly says they need to properly investigate whether Alan truly possesses exceptional talent. Later, Sebas calls Alan to his office and informs him that the Granvelle house house has decided to promote him. Alan will no longer work only as a manservant. Instead, he will also take on the role of a huntsman. As a huntsman, Alan's main responsibility will be hunting animals to provide high-quality meat for the royal household. In addition, if he encounters monster attacks while traveling or hunting, he is expected to help protect nearby bystanders. Sebas also explains that the previous pay-as-you-go system has been abandoned. Instead, Alan will receive a fixed salary of 100 silver coins. Alan agrees without hesitation. He immediately realizes this is an excellent arrangement. All he needs to do is hunt monsters as quickly as possible, return to his other duties, and then continue farming goblins for practice and resources. Feeling satisfied with the deal, Alan accepts the position of huntsman and declares that he will start work the next day. Sebas quickly raises his hand to stop him. He explains that Alan will not be required to work every single day. Alan will continue serving as Cecil's manservant and will still work as a waiter in the mansion. His huntsman duties will only be assigned once every few days, or roughly about once a week depending on necessity. Alan understands and accepts the arrangement. By March of the following year, Cecil becomes extremely excited. Her elder brother Mihai is finally returning home from the academy. Mihai arrives in dramatic fashion aboard a massive airship that slowly descends toward the port. The arrival of the airship attracts the attention of the household staff and nearby residents. When the airship lands, Mihai steps out with confidence. Seeing him, Cecil immediately runs forward and greets him with warmth and happiness. Alan watches from a short distance and is slightly surprised by how well the siblings get along. He remembers that Mihai entered the academy when he was younger, so he should be about 14 years old now. However, Mihai looks noticeably more mature and physically developed than Alan expected. Alan walks up to Mihai and politely offers to carry his luggage. While doing so, he introduces himself as a new manservant working in the mansion and also mentions his position as a huntsman. Mihai is genuinely surprised that a boy of Alan's age is already capable of handling such roles. He concludes that Alan must be exceptionally gifted to be trusted with such responsibilities. Before Alan has the chance to say anything further, Mihai presents a small souvenir he brought from the capital for Cecil. Cecil eagerly pulls Mihai away and begins talking about all the fun activities they will do together now that he is back. Watching the two siblings interact, Alan feels a quiet sense of nostalgia. The scene reminds him of his own home. He starts wondering whether his family is doing well and hopes that they are living peacefully. Later, while Alan is out hunting, he manages to catch a huge rooster and brings it back to the mansion. The chef is impressed with the size and quality of Alan's catch. He remarks that this is another excellent haul and suggests that they can use it to prepare something special for Mihai's welcome back dinner. Rickle then informs Alan that Zenoff and Mihai are currently having a duel. Hearing this, everyone moves to watch the fight. Alan observes the battle closely because this is the first time he has ever seen Zenoff fight using a sword. The duel continues for some time. Alan is surprised to see that Mihai is able to hold his ground against Zenoff. However, after a while, both fighters decide that the duel has gone on long enough and stop. After the duel ends, Mihai notices the large hunting haul Alan brought back. Seeing Alan's strength and endurance, he suggests that they should spar with each other. Zenoff calls Alan over and hands him a sword. Alan is immediately impressed when he realizes he's holding a blade made of mithril. He recalls that his attack stats have increased by 7 levels from all the hunting he has been doing recently. Because of this, he feels confident that he might be able to win the sparring match. Not long after, the duel begins. Unexpectedly, Mihai is much stronger and faster than Alan anticipated. Mihai takes the offensive from the very beginning and controls the pace of the fight throughout the match. Despite Alan's efforts, he is defeated. Alan accepts his loss and admits that Mihai is on a completely different level. He realizes he never really stood a chance in the fight. Cecil and Thomas quickly run over to Mihai and congratulate him. They tell him that he has become much stronger than when he was last at the mansion. Mihai explains that his strength improved because he cleared a dungeon during the summer. He also mentions that he received swordsmanship training from Diverg, the famous sword master. Listening to this, Alan quietly reflects that this must be what living life on easy mode feels like. Before leaving, Mihai mentions that he will not be returning until next summer. Hearing this, Alan asks him to promise that they will spar again when he comes back. Mihai agrees, but he also tells Alan to look after Cecil until he returns. Alan is slowly growing frustrated with his situation as Cecil's servant. His main goal goal is to help his family escape poverty as quickly as possible. If he had the freedom to choose, he would prefer to hunt monsters every single day. He begins thinking about how he can leave his current position without bringing shame to his father or damaging his family's reputation. A few days later, Mihai returns to his academy. Cecil feels especially sad watching him leave. A month later, Viscount Carnal visits Baron Granvel's residence. Alan serves both of them while remembering what Rickle told him earlier. Carnal holds the title of Viscount and governs the neighboring fiefdom, placing him one rank above Granvel in terms of social standing. Rickle does not know the exact reason for Carnal's visit, but he quietly warns Alan to remain cautious. The Granvel and Carnal families have been in conflict for centuries, and tensions between their territories have never fully settled. Carnal governs the White Dragon Mountains. Rickley gives Alan a brief explanation of the situation there. The White Dragon Mountains are rich in mithril deposits, a rare and valuable metal. However, extraction has been impossible because a powerful dragon inhabits the region. Its presence makes mining operations far too dangerous. As a result, the Granvel fiefdom has suffered a significant economic downturn. Hearing this, Alan realizes that the issue is far more complex than a simple territorial dispute. Setting that aside, Baron Granvel gets straight to the point. He asks Carnal why he truly came, stating that there is no reason he would travel such a distance merely to enjoy a meal. Carnal confirms this. He explains that his youngest daughter recently completed her appraisal ceremony, and he has come to announce the results. After hearing this, Alan begins to hope that Mash possesses a talent, especially since he showed such skill with the spear. With a satisfied expression, Carnal reveals that she is talentless. He then reminds Granvel that 2 of his 3 children possess talents. He adds that it must be unfortunate to be in Granvel's position. Granvel responds with restrained resentment and visible jealousy. Alan is confused. He had always believed that having a talent was something to celebrate. During the appraisal ceremony, he saw commoners rejoice when they received a talent and feel devastated when they did not. He begins to wonder why the situation appears reversed among nobles. Perhaps talents come with certain political or social complications for aristocratic families. After delivering his message, Carnal departs in his carriage. A few months later, October arrives and Alan is already 9 years old. On his day off, he visits the Adventurers Guild and meets up with Raven and his party. He tells them that he wants to start taking on C-rank monsters. They react with shock. C-rank monsters are considered dangerous even for many adult adventurers. However, they acknowledge Alan's skill and suggest that he at least acquire proper armor first. They take him to an armor shop and show him a variety of equipment. The piece that stands out most to Alan is a red armor set. He chooses it and heads out immediately to begin hunting. Hawkins scouts ahead and locates a sleeping C-rank orc. Alan releases his Tama squad, and together they defeat it without much difficulty. After carving the boar, he gets a C-rank magic stone and feels proud of accomplishing this largely on his own. Still, he reminds himself to remain humble. His defeat against Mihai proved that he still has significant room for growth. Shortly afterward, Hawkins signals that he has located another C-rank monster. Alan rushes over and discovers that it is a C-rank armored ant. He immediately deploys his saber-toothed tigers, but their attacks have no effect against its hardened shell. Quickly adapting, Alan releases his butterflies, causing the creature to fall asleep. As it collapses, he pulls out his dagger and attempts to finish it off, but its shell proves far too durable. Suddenly, the armored ant awakens, and Alan frantically stabs at it again and again, until he finally manages to bring it down. His grimoire displays the usual reward statistics. Everything appears normal at first. However, he notices something unusual. His intelligence stat is extremely high. He begins to wonder if this means he might be capable of casting spells. Curious, he asks Cecil to summon a professor to test his magical aptitude once he returns to the mansion. Cecil doubts it will amount to anything, as Alan has never shown magical aptitude before. The professor places a crystal ball in Alan's hands and instructs him to focus. After several attempts, the crystal ball shows no reaction. The conclusion is clear: Alan cannot use magic nor cast spells. Even so, he remains puzzled. If he lacks magical ability, why is his intelligence stat so high? That was episode 8. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.